I want to give a small gift that's big on meaning. These pocket prayer quilts are that special gift, that little something that says you matter. When you don't have time to make a large quilt, these are a perfect alternative. Hi, I'm Julie. Welcome to Quilting Plus More, where we're all about bringing your quilts to life so they can be treasured for generations. One thing I like about this project is it's another way to use up some of my small scraps, or I could use yardage. I have my basic quilting or sewing supplies, my thread, my scissors, my cutting mat, my rulers, and I'm also using these small little cross charms. And I'm using my felted wool for a no-turn little prayer quilt. The first step I need to take is to come up with my pattern. So I printed out some 4-patch blank blocks and just started playing with some different pattern options. Once I decided on using felted wool, my pattern came pretty quickly. I am using a Rose of Sharon pattern. My inspiration came from a quilt that I made in 2006. If you want an option to the Rose of Sharon pattern, you can also do something like this. Just cut out a little cross with the soft views on the back, iron it on, and then do the applique stitch around it. I backed it with another piece of felted wool, and I did not include a cross inside because of the cross on the outside, but I will include a little handwritten note with this quilt. Now that the pattern is decided, I need to decide whether to print my prayer or messages on paper or fabric. I decided to print my prayer or message on my backing fabric. And I decided to do this because I want the prayer handy, accessible to the user. And being on fabric, it's going to fit very easily into the pocket. I do not want to handwrite all these little guys out. And the print would have to be so small and legible. And my writing really doesn't fit that bill. I found a free downloadable pattern on onlinelabels.com that is a 2.5-inch template. That is perfect for these little pocket prayer quilts that finish 2 inches square. The link to the template is in the description below. I need to remember, once I download that template and start filling in my message, to leave 1/4 inch from the edge of my message to that line. That line is my cutting line, not my sewing line. I want to make sure that that outline doesn't show through. So I decided to remove that outline, plus it will give me a little bit of wiggle room when I go to cut out my squares. I did not find a way in Word to format just guide marks on the top and the bottom and the sides. So what I've done is I have printed out my template sheet and I'm using that as a guide, then reformatting that template without those lines and then printing it out. Once it's printed, I'm going to let that ink air dry, peel it off that backing paper, and heat set that ink with a hot iron. Then I'm going to rinse it under cool water and lay it flat to air dry. Now I need to iron them so that they lay flat as I'm cutting them into the 2.5-inch squares. I'm glad that I took off the lines because the fabric, it moved or pulled, I'm not sure which, just a little bit, but it was enough to skew the outline around the words. I'm taking my time while I am cutting out these backings to make sure that the wording is straight and my backings are square. Next, I'm turning my backing pieces so that they have a finished edge. I'm turning them 1/8 inch. Next, I need to cut out my fabric that's going to serve as my batting. I'm cutting these to 2 inches square. Now I need to gather my wool. I'm making 2 colorway options. The base or foundation top piece I'm cutting to 2 1/8 inches. This is because once I turned my backing pieces, that's what they measured to. The flower and the leaves, I'm tracing the pattern onto soft fuse, then ironing that onto my felted wool. Once that cools, I can now cut them out and arrange them onto my foundation or my top piece. I am now going to stitch an applique stitch around my pieces. I'm color matching my thread to the pieces. I'm taking the time to pull all of my threads to the back. I'm tying them off and burying them. I'm doing this to ensure that these little pocket prayer quilts will hold up to the use that they'll be getting. Now that all of these pieces are sewed down, I am ready to sandwich my little quilts for the final stitching. So my backing I've already turned, and I have cut my batting 2 inches, and I'm using a piece of fabric because these are so small. Batting would just be way too thick. I wasn't even going to use this little piece of fabric, but I decided because I'm using fabric on the backing that this little piece would act as a little buffer for this cross to kind of, because it's going to be loose in here. So this will kind of take some of the wear and tear that the backing would otherwise take as this is moving about. So I am literally just sandwiching these now, and the next step after this will be to do a decorative stitch around the edge, and that is going to secure everything together. So backing, my piece of fabric, my cross, and then my top. Now that they are all layered, I'm sewing an applique stitch around the edge. So now we are 100% finished, and here are our little prayer quilts. Aren't they just the cutest little things? You know, somebody has these in their pocket and, you know, puts their hand in and is rubbing on them. They have a cross in there to remind them. I sprinkled a little holy water on the crosses while I said a prayer. And while I was making these little quilts, I prayed as well. These really are little prayer quilts. Peace be with you all.